Die nachfolgende Sendung ist eine spendenfinanzierte Produktion von ERF Medien.
Welcome to a special edition of Mensch Gott out here in this lovely cafe. Our special guest today is Dr. Peggy Banksin from Florida in the United States. For some years, Peggy lived two lives. On the one side, she was a successful businesswoman and a fitness instructor. People really looked up to her. But at home, Peggy was living in personal hell as a victim of domestic violence. Welcome, Peggy Banksin.
Thank you, Marcus. It's good to be here with you.
What was going on at home at that time when you were in that bad relationship?
Well, it was really a living hell. There was a lot of anger, a lot of yelling, a lot of hitting, pushing.
I'm sure it's really difficult to talk about that, but may you give us examples of what your life looked like?
Well, one example I remember is when I was working in the gym. I used to train professional athletes. That was part of my business. And when I came home, my boyfriend, who I was living with at the time, he had been in the gym and he saw me working with this particular person that I was training. And we were in the kitchen talking and I was preparing dinner. And in a matter of seconds, he became angry that I was working with this athlete, and he put his hand on my throat, pinned me up against the cabinets, and started yelling and screaming at me. So in just a matter of seconds, you would be in a situation where I would feel restrained and yelled at.
Why didn't you finish this relationship?
Well, I tried several times. And, you know, with domestic violence, statistics tell us that people will go into that relationship and go back to that relationship up to 13 times before they're actually set free.
Same with you?
Yes, that's what I did. I would break up the relationship and then I would go back. You know, I was
and
dependent.
Why did you go back? Yeah, so you said you
I
were
was
dependent?
dependent on him for my identity. I was dependent on him for love. I thought there was a part of me that could change him. You know, there's this thing in me that I thought I was helping people and I could help him.
So every time he did something terrible, you broke up and then you got back to him?
I did, because the cycle of abuse does that. After they do something very bad to you, painful, beating you, then their cycle of being kind and tender and generous, and that was what he would do. He'd come back and he would say wonderful things about me, and he would do wonderful things for me, and it just grabbed you, and I was just dependent on that. I was looking for that.
In your business, you were a hard person, you were a tough person.
Yes.
Why weren't you that at home?
That's a good question. I think I was hoping that this relationship was going to allow me to be softer, allow me to be, I was just looking for someone to love me. And in business, I felt like I had to be in charge. I had to be in control. I had to run things. I had to make sure that the bills were paid. I had to train.
And you never thought about that being in charge at home would help you in your relationship?
No, I didn't. I thought being in charge meant loving him, helping him, caring for him, making dinner, you know, those kinds of things.
What was your idea of love at that time?
My idea of love was someone that would build me up, someone that believed in me, someone that would encourage me, say things that were nice and kind, supported me.
But that wasn't your relationship.
Partly it was. I mean, there were times when he was like that, and then there were times when he was not. And I would always feel that the reason he was not like that was because of something I did wrong. Not something that he was doing, but something I did wrong, where I didn't say the right thing, or I was paying more attention to another man and not attention to him. So he always turned it on me, that the reason I don't love you is because you're not acting right. You're not being right.
And did you see yourself at that time the way he did?
I did. I felt like I wasn't being right. I felt like I was acting in ways that was not right, appropriate for a relationship. So I kept trying to change myself more than change him.
Did you feel guilty sometimes?
Yes, I did. I did feel guilty. I felt guilty. I felt isolated. I felt depressed. I felt a lot of things. I felt like I couldn't ever get better. I couldn't ever be enough for him. It's continuing to try to be better.
Your history with domestic violence reaches far back to your childhood. What was your childhood like that you grew up with that?
For me, Marcus, I think it had a lot to do with how I grew up. Because I grew up without a father. 2 weeks before I was born, my father died. My mother had 3 other children, my 2 brothers and my sister. And when my mother went to bury my father, she found a note in his suit pocket that revealed my father had been unfaithful to their marriage. So when I was born...
So he wrote that note?
It was written to another woman. And my mother, I think she transferred all of her anger and bitterness and resentment onto me when I was born 2 weeks later. So although I had, on one side, I had a very loving family, my brothers and sisters, we got along very well. On the other side, my mother was very angry and hurt. And I remember one time when I was in high school and I chose not to wear a coat to school. And my mother was very angry that I wouldn't wear a coat to school and was beating me terribly before I left the house.
In the morning?
And my brother pulled my mother off of me, and then I had to go to school right after that. So we lived in a home where it was okay. It was just accepted. It was that type of home
violence.
Where, people, parents, that's how they discipline their children.
That was the idea at that time. Was there nobody to talk to, or nobody?
I don't think you ever talked about it. We didn't talk about it. It was a religious home, so I went to a church. I had a great experience when I was in school. I was a high achiever. I was a great athlete. I had friends, but you didn't talk about that because it was just part of discipline, that it's okay. And we just grew up around that. Now I know it's very wrong.
Experience in our childhood and our youth, they shape our whole life.
Yes.
What did shape you as a child?
Well, it shaped me in a couple different ways. First, I didn't trust anyone. I acted like I did, but deep down I didn't, because I grew up where people would say one thing and act in another way. So I could never trust what they were really saying to me. They could say, I love you and I'm so glad that you're my daughter. And then on the other hand, they would say you're stupid, you're ugly, you're never going to amount to anything. And so you just learn not to trust.
And to build up a facade.
Absolutely, yeah. I learned how to live a double life. I learned how to be friendly and kind and achiever outside of the home. And when I was inside my home, I was quiet, withdrawn, didn't want to make a mistake, did everything I could to not be hurt. And so people on the outside saw me as very fun and great personality and successful. Yeah. I was very much a high achiever.
You ended up in that bad relationship, and nobody knew anything about that. How did you get out of that?
So one day, a friend of mine invited me to her church. As an adult, I wasn't really going to church. I knew about God because I grew up knowing God. But as an adult, when I had the business, and I was training professional athletes, I wasn't really going to church. I was involved in a lot of things in the whole fitness industry. It's very much an outward appearance, how you look on the outside. It was all about how I looked on the outside.
You made videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I competed in national aerobic championships. I was on ESPN. I mean, it was all about how you look on the outside. And I had this life that looked like I had it all together.
And at home there was this relationship.
Yeah, there was. I was just dying inside to tell someone what I was going through. That there was this restraint, this difficulty, this place where I did not feel safe.
Yeah. And then there was this invitation to the service.
Yes.
And you went to the service, right?
I did. And I heard the pastor preaching a message from Psalm 46:1, and that verse says, "God is our refuge and strength and a very present help in trouble." And at that time, it just hit me that there is a God who could be my strength and refuge in a time of trouble, and I was really in trouble. I didn't know how to get out of this relationship, and so I gave my life to Christ that day, and I wanted God to help me get out of this relationship.
Did you meet God today in a completely different way?
Oh yes, absolutely. I grew up in a religious system that talked about how to live out religious routines. So you did this, and then you did this, and you did this. Where that pastor made me see that it was about a relationship with Jesus. I didn't know what it meant. All I knew is that I wanted it. I didn't understand how it was going to be different. I just knew that I wanted a relationship with a God that was going to help me. There had to be something better than what I was doing.
And you said you gave your life to Christ, to Jesus.
I did.
What does that mean?
Well, I believed that God sent Jesus to this earth. He became flesh, he became man, lived on this earth, and he lived to tell us about a God who loves us. And so if we believe that, the Bible says that we can now enter into a relationship with God because of Jesus. So I believed that God...
On that Sunday?
That Sunday. I believed that God sent Jesus to die for my sins.
Personally in your life?
Yes, yes. And I just said that. I just, at that church, they prayed with me, and I proclaimed that. I said that. Jesus died for my sins, and I want to have a relationship with Jesus.
Did it change something? Or?
It changed in the sense of I was willing to do whatever it took to have this relationship.
And God was your shelter in times of trouble.
Yes.
So you went home. What happened then?
That verse literally saved my life, and I tell you why. I came home that day, and I called my boyfriend, and I told him I wanted to get out of the relationship. Again, I had done that in the past, and so it wasn't new for me to say that. I think he took it pretty well on the phone.
Because he heard it several times before.
Yes, yeah. He didn't react to it until that night when he broke into my apartment, actually, and came there to kill me. So
did he have a gun?
He had a knife, and he came there very angry, pushed me up against the wall, beat me several times, had a knife to my throat, and was there for several hours saying things about me that made me believe that I would not get out of there alive. He said many things that he was going to do to me and did to me.
How did you feel?
I felt like there was no way out. I felt like my life was going to end. I was fighting for my life in the sense that I was just agreeing with everything he said. He said very terrible things about me and how I've ruined his life and how just bad things as he was hurting me.
Hours and hours.
Yeah. So I know today, Marcus, that it was only by God's grace that he left my apartment. And I really felt that night, God became my strength in times of trouble. My strength in the way that I was able to withstand the suffering and the beating and the rape repeatedly.
Did he recognize a new inner strength, or what was the difference?
I think the Lord may have shown him that. I don't know. I think there was a part of him that realized he could not accomplish what he came there to do. I wasn't in my own strength realizing that. I wasn't fighting in that way. But I think somehow God revealed that he wasn't going to get me. He wasn't going to be able to do to me what he came there to do. And because I wasn't fighting him like most people would think about fighting him. I wasn't pushing him away. I wasn't, screaming, but I was just agreeing. It was so interesting how God just took over. And somehow, supernaturally, just became this strength in me that he saw, that my boyfriend saw, and realized he wasn't, for some reason, was not going to kill me.
At what time did he leave the house?
Many hours later, several hours, probably close to midnight. I don't remember. But he broke several things in my apartment. During one time while he was there, the phone rang, and I don't know who it was, but he went and pulled the phone off the wall. He, he had me bound in places where I couldn't move, and so he just tore my apartment apart. Just angry, very angry, and you see that a lot. Women who want to get out of the relationship. You hear those stories all the time. The man comes and she tries to get away with her children, and he ends up coming to kill her, the children, and then himself. I was very surprised that he didn't end up killing himself. But, he was a military man. He was a very strong man because he worked in the gym, so he was a bodybuilder. He was a very strong man. So he had every opportunity and ability to
When he left, or after he left, what did you feel? What did you think about?
I really cowered in a corner for several hours. I didn't even move for many, many hours until the next day. I don't think I ever moved from a position of, I just was in a fetal position for many, many hours. You don't even realize when you're fighting for your life like that, what happens to you until many days, if not years later. I mean, realizing the more I talk about it and talk about getting hope and healing and working with people that I've worked with in my own life to find healing, you don't even realize how much that trauma has affected you until you start to tear away all the different layers. And so I didn't move for many hours.
How did you came back to life, or how did your life start then?
I will tell you this, and you'll think it's crazy, Marcus, but the next morning,
it was Monday morning.
I went back to work.
You took a shower, dressed up,
and I just went back to work. I just went back to work. I just kind of went out. Today, I would do something so differently. So different. I didn't prosecute. I didn't call the police. I didn't do any of that. I was so afraid that people would find out what I was involved with and what was happening to me. That I never wanted anyone to see, what was going on and to think that I couldn't handle a business, So today I would do something very differently.
What did your ex-boyfriend did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in this week?
I don't know what he did. I really tried to stay. I really didn't want to find out anything. I would imagine he went back to work. It was nothing for him. I just lived his life. That's what happens.
You did as well.
I did.
And you said you didn't want anyone to find out what was going on at home. What did help you to cope with this feeling of shame?
I don't think I really dealt with it for many years. I jumped into the church. I started going to church. I started to go to a Bible study. I started to make friends, but I don't think I really dealt with it for many years. During one of those Bible studies, God got a hold of my heart, and I actually opened up and told someone everything that I had been through.
You were deeply traumatized for many years.
Yeah. But that was like 5 years later.
And so you got out of the trauma, open up yourself?
But I will tell you this, which is so amazing, and this happens, and I admit it today, that even after that horrible situation, because of the dependency, the codependency on this relationship, I wanted to be back with him. I wanted to go back into a relationship with him within 6 months, But I had enough people around me that I didn't make that choice. But you still have this desire because that's what you know. I know abuse a lot better than I know love, and safe love, and kind love, and compassionate love. I knew abuse a lot better. So many times when you get into good relationships, you kind of sabotage it because you know the abuse better than you know the love. And that happened for several years.
But you said after 5 years you opened up. Yeah. Why did you open up? Why did you tell anyone what was happening?
I couldn't go on with my life being a lie. And I was in a lot of pain. Emotional pain. I was suffering from just fear. I had a tremendous fear of covering up so no one would ever find out. So I was building all these different walls around me that I thought,
years after this terrible night?
Yes. Yes. Once I opened up to a woman who was in a crisis pregnancy center. She loved me right where I was. She just listened to me. And then, she didn't react to everything that I had been through. And she just responded with love. And she guided me. And I started to read the Bible for myself. I started to pray. I would get alone with Jesus. I would read the Gospels. And he became the lover of my soul. He became that person that I found safety with, the person that I could trust. And the Word just became alive in me.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't there a moment when you were arguing with Jesus? Why did you have to go through all this pain?
God was so good in that I never argued with Jesus that I had to go through this pain and suffering and abuse. I did argue with Jesus to why I grew up without a father, why I didn't grow up with a good role model that could teach me about a love. But I think today, when I work with women, I want them to find truly their safety, a safe place and a secure place with Jesus alone. Because as much as we have good fathers, I'm sure you're a wonderful father, Marcus.
Hopefully.
But, you're not Jesus, I don't think. And the thing is that we'll always let people down. We can't put our trust in man, a person. We have to put our trust in the Lord, in Jesus, the person of Jesus Christ.
Is that your message to women when you talk about problems like that, situations like that? What is love for you right now? What is love?
I know this is going to sound maybe difficult to understand right now, but really love for me is the person of Jesus. It's safe, it's forever, it's a building up, it's a believing in. All those things that we see God's Word says about us. I hang on to those truths. I have people in my life, men and women, who are encouragers, who are supporters, who are wonderful friends. But I know that my trust is fully in the Lord. Psalm 9, verse 10 says that in the Lord, He is a refuge for the oppressed. He is the only place that we can find safety and healing, especially in situations. There are women in situations right now where they can't get out of it. They're in countries, they're in places where they can't get out of an oppression.
I know that you travel around in several countries to talk about that topic.
Yes.
And you worked in a project which is called Project Hannah.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Project Hannah speaks hope to women around the world and across generations, in that it tells them about this relationship, about this identity that they can have that is created in the image of God.
So it's not just anger management or fear management?
Well, I don't believe in anger management because I believe it's hard to manage our behaviors. What I like to say is we need anger resolution. We need to resolve our anger. We need to look into what is causing our anger. What's at the foundation? Anger is just it's a behavior that's an outward action of something that's much deeper, whether it's, fear or jealousy or lust. There's other things at a deeper level that's causing us to be angry. And so I say we have to resolve that with God, and then our behaviors change.
If you would choose a symbol on your life, what would you choose?
So I look at it as a journey of hope, and I think about going from brokenness to God's beauty.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Dr. Peggy Banksin, it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you very much for your openness.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Peggy Banksin was a victim of domestic violence, but today she's a messenger of hope to many women out there in the world. Thank you for watching us. Goodbye, until next time.